Alrighty, here we are. Gonna read a little bit of Elvis and Lucy, December 1970. So, I think I kind of gave y'all a lead up at the end of the last chapter about kind of the backstory of a little of this that's getting ready to happen. Because Lucy doesn't know all of it, but she doesn't know about the other girl. But anyway, so let's get started and we will see what meant most to Elvis, I'm sure, was this first visit to Washington when he meets with Lucy. Okay, so December 1970. I told everyone at home that there was a business emergency that needed my attention, but didn't mention it was out of town. I took only a briefcase and the clothes on my back, a calf-length black skirt, a blue blouse, black French boots with leather laces, and a black cape. When we landed, I took a cab to the Hotel Washington. The hotel was a dull stone building, not Elvis's style. He liked things bright, shiny, and new. He chose it because of the name. He was in Washington. It was the Hotel Washington. The simplicity of his thoughts was so endearing. Picking up the hotel phone, I asked for Mr. Burroughs. He was in. This was a switch. For once, I was on the outside tapping on the door. He smiled and we hugged from opposite directions than usual. "Oh, baby," he said, "I'm alive again." He was dressed wildly in a purple suit with a reversible purple and black cape. That was set off by a belt with a huge gold buckle and a gold medallion dangling from his neck. He carried a cane that appeared to be embedded with precious stones. He looked like Napoleon. He noticed my stare and twirled around to give me a full view. "What do you think?" "You look wonderful. Are you going to take it all off me?" "Are you going to take mine off?" I teased back. The outfit actually disturbed me somewhat. It was as if Elvis didn't know where his real life began and the show ended. Despite the vibrant colors, he looked tired. His hair was long and hanging in his face. His eyes were tender, but a bit glassy. There was a pistol on the table, but that was one touch that didn't concern me. I was from Louisiana and Texas and had been around guns all my life, including the small one I sometimes carried in my purse. He liked guns, and that was fine with me. I touched his face to feel his skin on my palm, then ran my hand through his black hair. He caught my hand, brought it to his mouth, and kissed it, then kissed me frantically, as though the moment might be taken from us. "My Desiree, say something to me." "I love you so much," I said. "I never thought I'd see you again. What's wrong, mon amour?" "I can't take this anymore. Even Daddy turned on me because I spent too much money on guns and stuff. I can't believe Daddy, siding with Priscilla and the Colonel. Man, they're all using me." Remember I told you that his dad got upset with him and then Priscilla? I guess Priscilla's been fussing with him for a while about it, and then his dad did it. And, his dad grew up poor, and so, even though there's lots of money, he gets nervous when he has to write these big checks and stuff to pay off bills. And so his dad is old school and said something about spending the money. And bless, Elvis just wants to spend the money the way he wants, and if he's buying guns, sometimes he's buying guns for other people, so he might get the bill from a gun store. But I know of several stories where he saw people looking at a gun at a store, and he walked up to them and asked them if they liked it, and they said yes, and he bought it for them. So giving. All right, little research. According to published reports, Elvis, The Final Years by Jerry Hopkins, and Elvis by Albert Goldman, among others, the argument started when two bills rolled into Graceland. One from a ritzy gun shop in Los Angeles totaled either $19,792 by Goldman or $38,000 by Hopkins. The second from a Mercedes dealership weighed in at $85,000. Vernon and Priscilla were said to have been alarmed by this spree and ganged up on Elvis. In her book, Elvis and Me, Priscilla says the argument was between Elvis and his father and was about Colonel Parker. She gives no indication whether she's participated or not. Lucy's version of the argument that preceded Elvis's trip to Washington coincides with that offered by many of Elvis's associates, including the chauffeur, Gerald Peters, who met Elvis in Los Angeles later that evening. Priscilla wrote that her marriage was severely strained at this time and blamed Elvis for spending so much time away from home. To me, he became increasingly unreachable, she wrote, because she was not the person he thought he was marrying. So he was not feeling attracted to her in that way and just was not connecting with her, and that's why she felt that way. But she was also having an affair. Hey. And he was too at this point. He was having affairs also. But he was searching through other people because, one, he couldn't have Lucy, and two, Priscilla was not the person he thought that she was. So he's not got anyone to connect to. All right, back to the story. His rage was building. I tried my best to calm him. You're letting anger take over. You know your father loves you, no matter what. Maybe he's also angry about your wife. I don't care what she does. I just want her out. She'll try to take Lisa. I know. Elvis, you must never replace love with hate. Try not to hate her. What about your friends Larry and Charlie? You said they could be trusted. Talk to them. They'll help. And you have me. I'm your friend. You're my only friend, he said bitterly. You're the only one who would never turn on me because you're the only one who doesn't care about money. Money is the cause of all these problems. And there are so many burdens. The kids that belong to Daddy's wife, Dee, they're a handful. They're all over Mama's house. Daddy shouldn't have done that, not to Mama. He shouldn't have brought that woman there. I held it in, Lucy. But man, you can't know how that hurt me. I've got to straighten it out. Daddy's got to decide which side he's on. Okay, so let's do a little backstory before we continue. So Elvis's mom died right before he went to Germany. When he went to Germany, he brought his dad and his grandma over to live with them, and also one of his buddies. And so the four of them stayed in a hotel until they were able to get a house. And then because he had family with him, he was allowed to live off base with family. His dad met a lady whose husband was also in Germany, and she had 3 boys. They were like 5, 4, and 2, something. They were pretty young. They were 5 and under. And there's contradicting stories, but I heard that she wanted Elvis but couldn't have him, so she moved in on their dad. So she was like, I guess 10 years young. I mean, she was probably in between Elvis's age and his dad's age because her children were much younger. Were like 10 years. Elvis was 23 at this time, 22 at this time. And so her kids were like 5 and, younger. So she was probably about 10, 15 years younger than Elvis's dad. But anyway, she moved in on him. And Elvis was not happy with that because his mom had just died. And he thought it was too soon for his dad to be going out. But this girl did her tricks on him, and he ends up coming back. And when they come back to the U.S., he marries her. And she brings the children with her. So now Vernon is their stepdad, and they are stepbrothers to Elvis. So y'all may not ever have known that. I never knew that, but he had 3 stepbrothers that were a lot younger than him. And he, to them, was very close. But I know he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder with the whole situation. And he would never, ever let that woman stay in his mama's room at Graceland. So he built an apartment in the garage. It was a huge, giant, like 3-car garage in the house, and or connected to the house. And he ended up putting in a roof, and they parked all the cars under under this carport and turned the garage into like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. So it was tight, but it was, big enough for his dad to stay there with his new wife and the 3 kids. And Elvis kind of wanted everybody under his fingers anyway, basically. After a couple years, at one of the houses at the back side of Graceland, on the other side of the fence, because it had, a barn and horse pasture. On the other side of that horse pasture was a house that went for sale. And they built a gate back there so Elvis could walk through the pasture and go through the gate to visit his dad. So they moved there. And that's where Priscilla was supposed to stay when she moved to Memphis. So she was going to stay at Vernon's house, and she could come back and forth through the pasture. And she stayed there some, but if Elvis was in town, if he wasn't filming a movie and he was in Memphis, she stayed at Graceland. But I think she stayed mostly at Vernon's house when Elvis was filming movies. And, she was still going to school. So she had to finish up her school those first 6 months that she was there. She had to finish up her senior year in high school. And so that's kind of the backstory that he's talking about right here, where he says, the kids that belonged to Daddy's wife, Dee. So her name was Dee Stanley, and then she married Elvis's dad. And so Billy was one of her sons, Ricky and David, and they all ended up working for Elvis when they became of age. Billy only did it for a year or 2, but then he wanted to get into car racing. He and Elvis really bonded on cars and all that kind of stuff. And I think there was some kind of, I'm not really 100% sure what happened, but there was some kind of argument between the 2 of them, and I think it had to do with a girl. And he ended up leaving and did his own thing for a while, and then he reconnects with Elvis right before he dies. So in his book, he wrote the book, The Faith of Elvis, all about what he learned from Elvis regarding faith. And he talks to him reconnects with him, and he has a really wonderful experience with Elvis right before Elvis dies. And then he also has another experience with him later on in life. But anyway, that's what he's talking about. So he talks about the kids. They're a handful. They're all over Mama's house. Daddy shouldn't have done that, not to Mama. He shouldn't have brought that woman there. I held it in, Lucy, but man, you can't know how that hurt me. I've got to straighten it out. Daddy's got to decide which side he's on. He turned and embraced me. That's why I've kept you out of reach. It's like putting something you love away from everything so its beauty won't be tarnished. I want to be with you more and them less. I want my life to change. You told me once you had a dream of running and not knowing where you were going. That's me, only it's real. I work and never finish. I don't have any destination. Do you know what I want? He said, looking deep into my eyes. I want what we had once, each other, love. Remember when we had so many plans? Excuse me. Go away. Ava's trying to get attention. Let me start this paragraph over. Do you know what I want? He said, looking deep into my eyes. I want what we had once, each other, love. Remember when we had so many plans? What happened to our dreams? The question stung. What happened was that my life was a mess and I ran away. Elle, our love is real. That won't change. But no one connected with you would ever have let it survive. Look at us, hiding, being lonely. If they knew you were here with me, they'd probably destroy me. We'll change it one day, he said. I want to clean house and start a production company. I want you to be involved in it. You can help me gain control of my life. I also want to write my life story. I want to show everyone how big a part of it you are. Wow. So we're talking December 1970, and he is already feeling the stress of being on the go all the time. This is 1970. Well, it's the end of 1970, but he's only been back in Las Vegas for 2 years and touring, and he feels like he's on the go, and can never stop. And couldn't that have been amazing if he had been able to stop? That darn colonel. And he would have started a production company. And he probably would have had a recording studio. I don't know if he would have wanted to do that more or be in the movies and producing movies. But he also wanted to be in a quartet. And that keeps popping up over and over. And one of the guys in the quartet said that one of the things they talked about towards the end was Elvis was going to get cleaned up. He was going to take a year and get cleaned up. And then he was going to come back and do a tour with his background singers that were in the religious quartet. And they were going to do a gospel tour. He wanted to do that. Can you imagine? I mean, it's hard to imagine, but that would have been really cool. Anyway, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. So he wants to write a book on his life story and show everyone how big a part of it Lucy is. Would that have been amazing to have heard it from his side? Oh my gosh. I would have loved to have heard that. Wow. Anyway, we lay down in the bed together, holding hands and enjoying being close. Instead of being warmed, I began feeling old and insecure. Mon chéri, why do you keep coming back to me when you have all the beautiful women in the world? Look at me. Tell me. He touched my face and looked at me so lovingly. I love you because you're you. Every woman I've ever been attracted to was a version of you. Only they were all missing something. None of them could match you. Until you and I can come together, I'll wait. And now, let me show you what I mean. Our capes dropped to the floor, along with everything else. There they go again. But remember how he told her how she sparkled? How much she shined inside and how she sparkled? Everybody was a version of Lucy. But none of them had everything. All right, so ... Their capes dropped to the floor, along with everything else. Why are you getting dressed? He asked later. I have to catch the late flight back to Dallas tonight. I'm sorry. Tonight? You have to go back tonight? You can't. I have to. I'm sorry. Can't you stay? I need you to stay. I can't, really. You're always leaving. Someday, Elle, I'll never have to leave. I'd like that. You'll never know how much I'd love that. Home will be with me. In the meantime, he continued, there are some more songs I recorded for you. I want you to listen to them. They're The Wonder of You, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, and I Just Can't Help Believing. I caressed his hand and promised to listen to the songs. As I did, I noticed that his hands were bluish and swollen. They've been like that a lot lately, he said. I don't know what it is. I have some strange pains in my hands and stomach. I haven't been feeling well. Will you please go see a doctor when you get back? That should be taken care of. I'm so worried about you. Do you feel well now? Early signs of his problems. I'm okay. I have doctors around all the time. I'm going to leave here, too. I don't want to be here without you. Where are you going? First, let me tell you why I'm here. You know all the work you do with the government? Well, I want to do that, too. I want to work with the Narcotics Bureau, become an undercover agent like my friend John O'Grady in Los Angeles. He caught me looking at him suspiciously. I was always wary of his so-called friends. Everyone wanted to use him. He's really my friend, a real friend, not like the others. He really is. If that was true, a friend would be welcome. Sometimes it seemed that he had no friends, but even so, what he wanted to do was crazy. Elvis, you're a singer, not a policeman. You have to be specially trained for that kind of work. Besides, it's very dangerous. I want to do something else with my life. I want to be useful. I need a purpose. I'm going to fly to Los Angeles and straighten some things out first. I don't feel too well now, but then I'm coming back here to volunteer. Are you sure you'll be all right? Yeah, but I want you to keep caring about me, baby. I need it, he said, smiling that same impish grin. He came over and hugged me tenderly. Just before I left, he handed me a manila envelope and told me not to open it until I got home. It was my Christmas present. Later that night, at home in Dallas, I opened it and found nearly $7,000 in cash. He got that out of his safe because he would keep, I think they said he would keep $10,000 cash in his safe. So if he ever needed cash, he could get it. So that's where he got it. He went to his safe intentionally and got $7,000 out for Lucy. Bless. My pride reared up for a minute, and I almost sent it back. Then I thought of Desiree and decided to use it for her. I bought her a beautiful handmade navy blue Swiss coat from Neiman Marcus. It cost $167, and for once I splurged. Elvis would have wanted that. I used the rest of the money for Desiree's schooling, ballet, and piano lessons. Elvis would have loved the fact that she was using that on his daughter, if he had known. A few days later, there was a picture in the paper of Elvis with President Nixon. The story mentioned that Elvis was going to support the president's war on drugs. He must have gotten his cherished agent's badge. So he goes to Los Angeles from Washington. She flies home. He goes to Los Angeles and catches up with one of his friends that was in the Memphis Mafia. He kind of come and went. He was from Memphis, from a poor family, no mother. His mother died. His dad raised him, very poor. And he met Elvis because he liked to play football. He had heard that, and he liked Elvis. He listened to that radio station, the Red, White, and Blue, that played Elvis's music first. That very first song. He used to listen to that music. He liked it too. And I don't know if he knew Elvis was playing football, but Elvis would get pick-up football games and play at this particular park. And I think he was just over there one day, and one of the guys played football and knew of this guy. And they needed an extra player, and he saw him on the sidelines, and he invited him in, and he was put on Elvis's team. And then he goes on and lives his life, goes to school. He went to Memphis University, played football there, and came back and ends up meeting Elvis somehow. I don't remember that whole story. And Elvis asked him to work for him because he didn't know what he was going to do right then. He said, well, why don't you come out to California with me while he was working on the movies. And so anyway, he ends up working in the movies. He does like splitting the splicing and stuff. And so sometimes he would work for Elvis and sometimes he wouldn't. And at this point he was not. So he goes to Los Angeles. Elvis calls him up and asks him to get $500. So he goes and gets $500, and then they fly back to Washington, D.C. And when he's on that flight, he's on American Airlines, because I've seen the letter that he wrote to President Nixon. I'll send a picture of it. And he wrote it on American Airlines stationery on that flight back. He also meets a guy in the service on the plane who is going, this is December, and so he meets the guy coming home from service on leave for Christmas, and he ends up giving the guy all the $500. and Jerry, his friend's like, why did you do that? We have no money now. But anyway, so they go back to Washington, D.C., so he can meet with Nixon. And this girl that he's met, her name is Joyce Bova, and he met her in August of that year. She came to a concert, and the guys saw her standing in line, thought she looked like Elvis's type, and so she meets him. And he's intrigued because two things. One, she's a twin, and two, she works for the government. And so he thinks while he's in Washington, he's going to give her a call, and he invites her over. So there's a whole story. I've read her book, and it's a pretty exciting book. Anyway, he meets her the second time around, and that's what everyone knows. No one knows about this part where he goes there and meets Lucy, and then, but everyone knows about the rest. So anyway, that's what has happened in Elvis's side. But Lucy doesn't know anything about that, so she doesn't talk about it in her book. So, because she doesn't know about it. Elvis isn't going to talk to her about, there's also a girl in Washington that I know, but she might look like Lucy, and but she doesn't have everything that Lucy has. So, anyway, well, here's a picture. We'll look at a couple pictures. This is Desiree in 1973 at age 15, looking more and more like her father. What do you think? I think she looks like Elvis when he was young. She's got the high cheekbones. She's got his nose. She's got his mouth, his chin, his jawline. Very much like him. But I think she's got her mother's eyes. Definitely has her mother's dark hair, but she's a good-looking girl. And she's tall like Elvis. She ends up being tall. He's 6 feet. Lucy is my size, 5'1". So here we got Elvis young and Lucy young. You can see more of her eyes. But look at that jaw. She definitely has that French look to her, doesn't she? Here's another picture of Lucy, a little bit older, closer to Elvis's age, and there's Elvis. Beautiful girl. Got those high cheekbones that Elvis had. See those high cheekbones? It's from his native heritage. His great-great-grandmother was Cherokee on his mom's side. Beautiful. Beautiful girl. Look at that jawline. Well, it's hard to see it. It's more to see it right there. Okay. Here's Elvis in 1973. So we're getting a little ahead, so I'm going to hold off on the rest of the pictures. This was at the Aloha Special, which he recorded in early January of 1973. So we're 3 years out. I love that suit. They've got it at Graceland, and it's got a eagle on it. He was so proud to be an American. So proud. All right, so let's skip that, and we're going to go to the next. So we've got a little research from the author. Elvis's trip to Washington, Los Angeles, and back to Washington has baffled biographers for nearly 2 decades. The first trip, when he traveled alone, remember this was written in 1987, so why would it have been 2 decades? Oh, well, I don't know. He'd only been dead for 10 years. So the first trip when he traveled alone is the one that has given writers the most headaches because, unaware of Lucy, they found no explanation for it. That left them with nothing to do but speculate, attributing it to everything from Elvis's James Bondish nature to drugs or illness rattling his brain. Actually, his motivation was the oldest and simplest in the world. He wanted to be with the woman he loved. The biographers got back on track in explaining why he picked Washington and why he returned a few days later. Elvis, I wonder if she had stayed, if Elvis was going to use that $7,000 to give them, for the two of them to stay there. And if she had stayed, he would have continued with what he was going to do. He had to get an appointment with the president, go see the president. All that took a little bit of time. And I wondered if Lucy had stayed in Washington, he would have just stayed with her. And he wouldn't have done that Los Angeles trip, any of that. he would just stay with Lucy. Golly, come on, Lucy. You missed out on that opportunity. God, dadgummit. The biographers got back on track, explaining why he picked Washington and why he returned a few days later. Elvis was a police buff, which he was. He very much respected the police. All they had done for him, all of the years, he was very much respectful of the police. He was a police buff who collected badges from police departments around the country. His return to Washington was motivated by his desire to get an agent-at-large credential from the Department of Justice's Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. He learned about it through John O'Grady, a Los Angeles super cop turned private detective who Elvis hired to investigate a paternity suit in 1970. Yes, there was a lady who claimed that Elvis was the father of her child, and he hired John O'Grady to do the investigating, and he ended up doing a blood test, and found out that he was not the father. But anyway, that's how he met John O'Grady. O'Grady, known as the Big O, was formerly the sergeant in charge of the Los Angeles Police Department's narcotics squad and was responsible for 2,500 busts. He is also an accomplished storyteller and attested to by his book, O'Grady. Elvis was fascinated by O'Grady's riveting stories of the danger and intrigue of the undercover life, and the two men became friends. John O'Grady is also the one that put together the phone list for Elvis, where Desiree was on that list. Her name was on that list of approved callers at Graceland. When Elvis arrived in Los Angeles later that night, so Lucy left, they met, spent the day together. Lucy flies back home, and he flies to Los Angeles. So when he arrived in Los Angeles later that night, he was dead broke, having given Lucy every cent he had. He rounded up a former Memphis Mafia member, Jerry Schilling, saw a doctor, because he wasn't feeling good. Remember, his stomach was bothering him, and he had some weird aches. Then flew back to Washington a day or so later to continue his quest for a badge. On the flight back, Elvis befriended a soldier and ended up cleaning out his wallet again, giving the man the $500 he had acquired in Los Angeles. Also during the flight, he wrote a letter to President Nixon offering his help in the fight against drugs. Elvis went to the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs and met with Deputy Director John Findlater. Findlater denied his request for the badge. Elvis had better luck with Nixon. The president agreed to meet the king that same day, and when Elvis mentioned the badge, Nixon made a call. With the presidential recommendation, Elvis was dubbed an undercover agent. Did y'all know that? He had a badge that gave him the rights to be an undercover agent. Oh, man. Elvis loved to play policeman. He actually had one of those lights that you could put on top of your car, and he would pull people over. He would put that on for fun. He would put that on and follow someone and then turn it on and pull them over, and then he'd go and give them an autograph. He was so silly, the things he would do for entertainment. Oh, my gosh. So he probably felt pretty special that he had this badge. And there are some of his badges on display at Graceland. The final irony is that the one person most hated by the bulk of rock and roll fans of the late 1960s and early 1970s was the creature Elvis aspired to be, an undercover narc. Talking about the one people that most of the bulk of rock and roll fans did not want to have an undercover agent because they wanted to do their drugs. And here he was going to, he would be most hated. And Elvis himself was a heavy drug user, although he obtained his legal, quote-unquote, drugs through subservient doctors. So he did not feel like he was taking drugs. They weren't street drugs. They weren't illegal drugs. They were legal drugs prescribed by a doctor. And they were drugs to help him go to sleep because he was an insomniac. and his brain would not turn off at night. And he would think about the show and think about the songs and think about Lucy and think about his problems with trying to keep up and working and all the people that depended on him, Priscilla. And he just could not go to sleep. But even his mom talked about him having insomnia when he was a young boy. So, and he sleptwalked. He was walking his sleep. And so his mom talks about that much way back in the early days. So he couldn't sleep. So he'd had that problem his whole life. And he had the problem with the digestive problems his whole life with, being constipated and stuff. So when he found out he could take a drug to sleep, I don't blame him. I mean, I really don't. When you've suffered something for many, 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 many years and you find out there's a drug that you can take that is prescribed by a doctor, so it's okay, I would take it too. So, but then he also needed, because sometimes he'd be like, well, that's not quite enough. I can't go to sleep. I need another one. And then he'd have to wake up the next morning, which to him was at 4 p.m. And he'd have a show at 8, and he might be a little groggy. So he'd take something to help him wake up. So, but that was prescribed by doctors based on his size and weight. And sometimes he would take that and maybe like, oh, I need a little extra oomph. So he'd take another one. It wasn't to be high. It was to be Elvis Presley and keep doing the life that he was living. Because so many people depended on him now for their paychecks. And he had to keep going to provide. So, and he's feeling the pressure of that. So to him, he's taking medication, but it's all prescribed by doctors. Instead of lost love, Elvis's new songs spoke of a woman who was always there when he needed her. The Wonder of You was released as a single in May 1970. So he had probably just recorded it. I think he had another recording session in August 1970, or maybe in July. I think he records again with Sound Studios. And so in the fall of that year or late summer, so probably right before he went out to Las Vegas for his fall. But anyway, that must have been when he recorded The Wonder of You. It was, and then it was released in May of 1970 and appears on numerous albums. You Don't Have to Say You Love Me was released as a single in October 1970 and also appears on numerous live and studio albums, including Elvis, That's the Way It Is. I Just Can't Help Believing is also on Elvis's That's the Way It Is, which was released in December of 1970. I just can't help believing. Was that a Tom Jones? And he and Tom Jones were really good friends. So, and like I said, if he heard a song and liked it, he would record it. Or he would cover it during his concerts. And and That's the Way It Is was a concert documentary. And so it was probably recorded during that. And then they made an album out of it. So that Colonel, he had a way of making money. All right, let's see. We have 2 more pages. All right, back to the story. Life was filled with work and responsibilities. That Christmas, 1970, my youngest children surprised me with a beautiful set of Norman Rockwell collector plates that showed the 4 seasons of the year. The children had used their money they made selling brownies to buy them. It was a lovely gift and touched my heart. They were such wonderful children. They tried so hard to give me enough love to fill the emptiness in my heart. They could tell. They sensed it. The year passed quickly. Elvis called periodically, but he was busy touring and playing Las Vegas. I resigned myself to enjoying what moments we had and enduring the separation. On Christmas, he sent, so this is Christmas of 71, he sent a single talisman rose. I love those roses. They're like orange and fade up to pink, or they're yellow and fade up to orange and then pink. They're just so pretty. I love the colors in them. It's my favorite rose also. Always has been, not since I learned about Elvis. I've always loved those roses. I remember telling Mike when we first started dating, he asked me and I told him that was the kind of rose that I liked. And I guess he couldn't find any because he sent me yellow roses. But anyway, let's see. On Christmas of 71, he sent a single talisman rose. The card was similar to the previous years. It said, "You're my snowbird. All my love, your secret admirer." After that, I had a horrible feeling that Elvis was sick. A feeling so ominous, I decided to call his father for the first time. Elvis had given me his number. Mr. Presley was friendly and receptive. I explained that I was a friend and that Elvis had said it would be okay to call. He talked openly and said Elvis was working too hard and that Lisa was living with Priscilla away from Graceland. See, Priscilla was staying more and more in California. They had a house. They had bought a house in California, really nice house, and used to be owned by the guy that started McDonald's. But they were living there, and so when Elvis would come back to Graceland, Priscilla would stay out there with Lisa. She would enroll her in school in California. So Elvis would stay in California, but he loved Graceland, and he would come home to Graceland, and they would stay out there. Isn't that so sad? Stupid Priscilla. With Priscilla, with Lisa, Elvis was working too hard, and Lisa was living with Priscilla away from Graceland, which made him upset. We spoke briefly, and he told me to call him whenever I wanted. Elvis didn't call for a few months, until February of 72. He was agitated again and spoke of things happening that were out of his control and all the pressure on him. The problems with Priscilla were continuing, and now he was having problems with the guys. Then he said something that he used to tell me a long time ago. "Don't believe anything you hear or read unless you hear it from me." That's what he used to tell me when there were published reports about his girlfriends. That usually meant trouble. "Are you well? What's the matter, Elle? What's upsetting you?" "I'm all right, but Priscilla is accusing me of womanizing so she can feel better about her sins." There seemed to be something else wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. The newspapers and magazines were soon full of sensational stories about Elvis and Priscilla splitting up. She ran off with a karate instructor. Not long after that, the magazines were writing about and showing pictures of Elvis and his new girlfriend, a tall, attractive beauty queen named Linda Thompson. I felt like someone had ripped my heart out and crushed it. What a fool I had been to think he loved me. The minute Priscilla was gone, he wasted no time bringing in a replacement. My pain turned to anger, then back to pain. It was so deep I was physically sick. Shortly afterward, I had chest pains and collapsed. I called my friend Marty Herndon, and she rushed me to the emergency room of Presbyterian Hospital. The doctor was Henry Mobley, a noted cardiologist. He ran every test he could but couldn't find anything wrong. I wondered if it was truly possible to die of a broken heart. When I returned home a few days later, there were messages that Mr. Jones had called. I was in no mood to accept them or to call him back. What good would it do? The stories weren't fabrications. This beauty queen was his official girlfriend. What could he say? At Christmas, I received a dozen roses. The card said, "Always on my mind. Love, El Lancelot." Sure. Okay, a little research, and then I'll unpack that a little bit more. There are varying reports as to when Priscilla began her relationship with Mike Stone. In Albert Goldman's Elvis, the chapter on the affair is attributed to interviews with Stone. The book itself is based largely on the recollections of longtime Elvis sidekick Lamar Fike and other members of Elvis's Memphis Mafia. In this account, the affair is said to have started in 1968 and includes the observation Priscilla concealed her affair for 3.5 years before revealing it in 1972. The great length of this subterfuge, which I don't know what that means, tells a lot about the Presley marriage. Clearly, the marriage entailed so little intimacy or even cohabitation that Priscilla was at liberty to make what was in effect a second marriage. As noted previously, Elvis actually knew about it from the beginning, along with the prior affair with her dance instructor. My own interviews with friends and associates of both Elvis and Priscilla place the beginning of the Stone affair anywhere from 1968 to 1970. In her book, Priscilla says she met Stone in 72, shortly before she left Elvis. Well, okay. So, Elvis has told people, and people have shared, people that were in his group, that Priscilla told him right before he went on stage, in Las Vegas. So I'll have to look back to see when that was in 1972. So it was in late 72 is when she told him. But the wives, only came out to Las Vegas during, for the first show and the last show. So I don't know, maybe it was the last show. But that would have been, I'll have to look and see when his Las Vegas dates were in 1972. But it could have been something else. But I always feel like when she says late 72, I always feel like it was around Christmas, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But she told him she was leaving him right before he was going on stage to do a concert. Can you believe the timing of that? That's terrible. And Lisa Marie talks about it in her book. But I feel like Priscilla came in, actually now I'm starting to remember it, that I don't think she was there with him as the wife at the beginning and the end. I think she came in and she found out that he knew she was there and wanted to see her. And so I think it was in between two shows. He tells her to come in to see him, and she tells him then. So anyway, it's terrible timing because he has to go out and do a concert. But basically, they are separated. So she's leaving, and so they start their separation in late of 72. I think you had to be separated for a year before you could have an actual divorce, and their divorce is finalized in October of 73. So maybe it was in like September when he was in Las Vegas for that show of 72. But anyway, so she has the affair after Lisa's born in February of 68, and then of 68. So then he does a 68 special, records it in the summer of 68 in June. She brings the dance instructor, so she's still with the dance instructor then. So I don't know when the dance instructor affair ended, and then she starts going out with this karate instructor who Elvis knew. His name is Mike Stone, and he was one of the top, and he encouraged her to take karate lessons, and she goes to this guy because they're in L.A., and he had a studio in L.A. That's where she goes, and he's like, yeah, you should go to Mike Stone, and then she starts an affair with him, and she ends up leaving Elvis for Mike Stone, and in 72. So I don't know when she started seeing him. But then, what else was I going to say? So then Elvis is basically by himself for a while. And then in July of 72, so she leaves him. She must have left him before that. Because, anyway, he meets Linda in the summer of 72. And she is invited by... So Linda is Miss Tennessee, and she represents Tennessee at the Miss America, and she's from Memphis. And so she does that, and she comes back, and she knows George Klein. George Klein has interviewed her because she is, Miss Tennessee. And so George Klein is one of Elvis's friends who went to high school with him, and he's the radio DJ, so he invites her to be on his show. And so Linda is one of the girls that was representing Miss New Jersey. They became really good friends during the Miss America contest, and she invites her to Memphis to visit, and they're going out for lunch, and they go into a restaurant, and George Cline is in there. And George says, hey, y'all want to meet Elvis? We're going to the movies tonight. And Linda had always loved Elvis. And she had, when she was a little girl, she used to tell her parents, I'm going to marry Elvis Presley one day. And so she was like, well, yeah. But then she's like, and so they end up going that night to meet Elvis and go to the movies. And Elvis, when he sees her, he is dumbstruck by her beauty and her humor and her sarcasm. And so he ends up inviting her to sit next to him during the movies. And then they start seeing each other. And he invites her to go to Las Vegas for his shows that next fall. So like in the September of 72, she goes out there, and then she basically moves in to Graceland, and for a year they're together nonstop. She says, I know he didn't cheat on me for a whole year because he was with me 24/7. Well, there are a couple times where I think he leaves to see Lucy, but we'll find out as we digest that. But in the next couple of years, or the next year. But I think that's one reason why he does not talk to Lucy very much. I think she says she talks to him February of 72. So he's separated. He meets Linda Thompson in the fall. There's something wrong. When he returns. So then, when was it? I guess. So we're still in 72. Or did we go to 73? I can't remember if we went to 73 or not. Elvis didn't call for a few months until February 72, and agitated, blah, blah, blah. Don't believe anything you hear. But he didn't meet Linda until the summer of 72. So she returns home from the hospital. There are messages from Mr. Jones. So she could be getting a little bit of the timing off because she remembers certain things, but might be having the timing off a little bit. But anyway, that's where we are. So I feel like the whole year went by. But anyway, I can't quite remember. But anyway, we'll be at winter and spring 73. So we're going to stop there. And yay, I'm up to almost an hour again. But I'm going to put those songs on the text string, and also the picture of Elvis that the White House says is the most requested photo that they get. Is people write and say, can I have the picture of Elvis and Nixon? And I'm also going to see if I can find the letter that he wrote, and I'll attach that also, the letter that he wrote to Nixon. All right, I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.